feeling a little bit like the Grinch today in my sweater. Like I'm wearing his skin or something. But that's okay because today I'm going to be a little bit of a Grinch or Scrooge, if you will. Let's talk about It's a Wonderful Knife, which is a play on It's a Wonderful Life movie, obviously. Winnie's life is less than wonderful 1 year after saving her town from a psychotic killer on Christmas Eve. When she wishes she was never born, she finds herself magically transported to a nightmarish parallel universe. With the murderous maniac now back, she must team up with a misfit to identify the culprit and get back to her own reality. So not only is the title a play on It's a Wonderful Life, which is a holiday classic, it's also the storyline, basically, from the movie. And then they take it and make it into this campy slasher where the killer is actually called the Angel. I promised you guys a review on this, and I'm not gonna let you down, but I'm also not gonna lie. This movie, I'm not the audience for, okay? How many times have I said that recently on my channel? I feel like I've been very, not negative on my channel, but I haven't been sharing like good recommendations and like doing all of that. I've posted a lot of videos on movies I won't watch, which a lot of people find funny. The comments alone, you know, gave me a laugh too. So, you know, we're all getting entertainment there from those videos, I guess. I went in with such an open mind into It's a Wonderful Knife, and I was actually looking forward to like a Christmas holiday type of horror movie, because last year I went in with zero expectations to Violent Night and ended up kind of liking it. It wasn't the best movie, but it was a fine, you know, entertaining movie. I kind of expected it to be on that level. So that's kind of the open-mindedness that I was going into this movie, and it's on Shudder, you know, I was like, I'll give it a chance. So before we get into like the full review and my thoughts and everything about it, I just want to have a moment to talk about this horror subgenre that isn't necessarily new, but it has become way more popularized these days, specifically this year. We've gotten 2 of these movies mainstream this year, and it's getting to be a bit of a trope, and in my opinion, overdone. Happy Death Day, Final Girls, Totally Killer, we also got this year, and I did watch, is this new kind of not even new kind of subgenre, but it's a subgenre of horror where it's a horror comedy / dark comedy. We'll get into specifics on that later. A dark comedy that bends reality or time travels, but it's also a slasher. Like, it's a very classic slasher movie that bends reality or time travels, and it's also a comedy. Like, we're getting a lot more of those these days, and I have to tell you, it is my least favorite subgenre of horror. And I know people are gonna say, well, do you just not like fun? Because these are fun movies. No, I don't. I don't always like it to be fun when I'm watching horror. There's a time and a place for a comedy movie, and for me, I don't like it mixed with my horror necessarily. Again, we're gonna get to that a little bit later when I get into the review. So I just wanted to preface this review with that, saying that I'm not the target audience for movies like this. So naturally, my review of this movie is going to be negative, and I don't want you to be like hurt by that or anything. Don't take it personally. It's just my opinion and my personal taste of horror. These kind of movies, the dark comedies, I've never really been a fan of. So It's a Wonderful Knife is directed by Tyler McIntyre, who is also known for directing Tragedy Girls, and he also wrote the recent movie Five Nights at Freddy's. And I'm just gonna say, I did watch that one. I'm not a huge fan of his work, I think. I will talk more about Five Nights at Freddy's and Totally Killer and all of the movies that were released in 2023 at the end of the year, like I always do. Well, at the end of this month, actually. In just a couple weeks, short weeks, I will be discussing all the movies and ranking all of them. So you'll hear my thoughts further on Five Nights at Freddy's. I know you guys are interested in it. Again, I'm not the audience for that one. This is also written by Michael Kennedy, who wrote a similar movie called Freaky. Again, don't think I'm a fan. I didn't watch Freaky. I watched, I think, 20 minutes of it, but it's not my movie, you know? I DNF'd it last year. It just wasn't for me. And what I find interesting about Michael Kennedy's work and his writing, his films that he's written, they seem to be referential. They are very much, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just pointing out a little bit of a pattern that I'm seeing between Freaky and It's a Wonderful Life. Seems like he has a lot of references or like things that are inspired by other things. They're not very original work. It's a Wonderful Knife stars Justin Long, Katharine Isabelle, and Joel McHale, and among other people, obviously. But those are the three big names that were attached to this one, and that is why I had an open mind about it, because generally I like those three, some more than others. I like Katharine Isabelle, obviously, from Ginger Snaps and American Mary. Justin Long, I think, was great in Barbarian and Tusk. Joel McHale, he's just a comedian, so I don't really have that much of an opinion of him, although I did used to watch The Soup. So that's my relationship with Joel McHale. And I thought it had a little bit of promise because of those people in it, that the performances would at least be okay. And I was kind of wrong. We'll start there. I was a little bit wrong. Now, they were fine. I feel like their performances weren't even particularly special. I didn't even believe them some of the time. I think they were casted in their roles pretty well. Like, they made sense for those characters, but in general, I wasn't a huge fan. And those three are decent actors, and so for me to kind of be, like, not believing their characters all the time, I mean, the characters were interesting. I liked especially Katharine Isabelle's character and Justin Long's character. Obviously, they were more unique, and they were the most unique characters, I think, in this movie. But it is saying something that I wasn't, I wasn't impressed or anything. I guess everyone did fine, but fine is not really what you're going for when you release a movie, I think. And one of the issues is filming took place 6 months before its premiere at Beyond Fest, and it felt like it took, it was done in 6 months. Filming, editing, all of it, done in 6 months. And that it feels rushed. I think everything about this feels rushed, from the writing, to the performances, to the editing, the story. They probably spent more time working on the story prior to filming, obviously. So that probably had more effort put in, but you couldn't tell. It was just, you could tell it was rushed. It was definitely done in a short period of time. So this movie, in addition to pretty much all the other movies within this subgenre, take away the tension, which is a very necessary plot device when it comes to these movies, because that is the horror element. You're taking away a lot of the horror element by removing the tension, by inserting comedy into tense scenes when you should be feeling, distress or, something, but instead they use humor to cope with the scene. And that's totally fine. That is a choice, it's not going to work for everyone. But then to me, it doesn't read as a horror movie. Just because it has kills and death scenes and blood and whatnot doesn't necessarily make it a horror movie. I mean, action movies, thriller movies have blood, have kills and deaths and things, and they're not horror movies. So you need something else in there to give that feeling of dread to the viewer. And when you remove that with comedy, it becomes something else. And I'm not trying to get nitpicky about subgenres because, it's not that serious. It's not that deep. But I do think there is a difference between a dark comedy and a horror movie with comedy elements. And this is a dark comedy. And I think that is what this subgenre is. It's not necessarily, see, now I'm just playing semantics. If I'm like, it's not a horror comedy, it's a dark comedy. It's like, that sounds stupid and like I'm, gatekeeping and being like, that's not a horror movie. Like, I'm not trying to sound like that or like nitpick the subgenres of horror, because it does not matter. It literally does not matter. I'm just trying to explain the difference, I think, between these movies and why I don't enjoy them as much, especially as horror movies. And it's because they don't read as horror movies to me. Like, the kills and the deaths they have to be, I think, a little bit more extreme to be considered more on the horror side, because otherwise it's just kind of actiony. I mean, sometimes the kills can be graphic in these movies and there's lots of blood, but then when the reaction from the characters is a little bit lighthearted or definitely not as tense as you should probably be in those situations, it makes it less realistic and takes the tension away. That's all I'm saying. So this subgenre is kind of like comedy movies with horror elements versus horror movies with comedy elements. Horror movies that have comedy elements, to me, some good examples of this, for me personally, this is how I would describe it, are movies like Barbarian and Get Out. They're true horror movies, but they're written by comedians. So naturally there's going to be some funny moments in there, but the focus is not on the comedy. It's not on the quips between the characters or anything. It's focused on the horror and like the psychological tension in these movies, and sometimes just the physical horror of what we're looking at. And one is not better than the other. That's not what I'm trying to argue here. A lot of people enjoyed these movies. movies. They're fun. This subgenre is definitely more objectively fun to watch and enjoy than the horror movies with comedy elements, right? I have my personal preference, and that is minimal comedy in my horror movies, and I am particular when it comes to comedy in my horror movies. But Get Out and Barbarian are good examples of when it actually works for me and when I like it. However, I do like some horror comedies, don't get me wrong. I don't like any really past 2015 though, I'm not gonna lie. I just think this genre is getting a little bit too overdone, and it's becoming a trope. Like, it's becoming a formula that directors and writers are following versus making a really unique story and like telling a really unique story with it. But there is a reason why these movies are popular amongst fans. People like them. Sometimes they're well done and are fun. And sometimes people want fun and they don't want a lot of brutal, messed up stuff. And I am here for that. Let me tell you, I agree with that. I just prefer to go the ghosty, supernatural, psychological route than the gore if I don't want gore anymore. Anyway, let's get back to the review. So there was a lack of tension. That's all to say that there was a lack of tension in this movie, and that everything was pretty lighthearted, and that the characters do not react. Even if you take movies like Scream and whatnot, they have better performances and better reactions to things, and the actors do a better job portraying like psychological terror and whatnot, even though it's more on the lighthearted side. I'm not saying they have to go full on Hereditary. You know, it's okay to have a fun time with it, but there's a way to do it where there is still tension in the movie. And honestly, I didn't find any of the characters to be particularly likable. Like, they were fine. They were fine characters, but I'm not necessarily rooting. I mean, I'm rooting for Winnie. Winnie's written fine, but at the same time, it's like it feels like fake depthness. You know, they're trying to make her this deep character, and I'm not connecting with it. I don't know if there was enough shown or like enough backstory to show like how poorly she's treated by everyone in her life. There was just like a few scenes to make the viewer be like, oh, okay, so, you know, these people are treating her badly, and that's why she just doesn't want to exist anymore. And it felt like a plot, you know, moving along the plot, and it didn't feel real. Like, it didn't feel emotional. Like, there weren't very many emotions in this movie of any kind. I think sometimes when people are making these kind of movies, like these dark comedies, they're afraid to include anything too heavy in them because they don't want to like bum the viewer out or whatever, or, you know, they don't. It's an emotional journey though. You chose It's a Wonderful Life for a reason. You chose this emotional journey she's supposed to go on, so let's give her some more emotion other than like sitting at the pier and being like, oh, man, I wish I didn't exist. Like, everyone's life would be so much better if I just wasn't here. And then she just wasn't there. So it didn't feel like deep enough. And again, there's ways to do it where it doesn't have to be overly heavy for the viewer, you know, you can still have fun with it. But the story is kind of your classic telling of It's a Wonderful Life, or even A Christmas Carol, it kind of reminds me of. Obviously it's a little bit different, but she finally, you know, gets to see her worth because she gets to experience what the town would be like if she had never existed. Or does she get to know her worth? I don't really know, because there's really no emotion behind her performance, not a lot anyway. And I just feel like the message is a little bit strange. Like, everyone treats her really poorly and she just doesn't want to be around anymore. Sorry, I just thought of the I Think You Should Leave skit where he's in the mall in the costume. He's like, I don't want to be around anymore. Anyway, but the message is, I guess, that yeah, people might treat you poorly, but, you know, I'm trying not to spoil the movie, even though it happens at the very beginning of the movie. I don't know. I will be doing spoilers later in this video because I feel like it. But it's like, yeah, people treat you shitty, but you just be grateful. You know, it could be worse. More people, you know, could die. So maybe be a little bit grateful for your life. Like, that was the message, I guess. I mean, it's fine to make it about like finding appreciation in your existence and being grateful to be alive, but like, did we resolve anything? You know, the people are still like bad. I don't know. Anyway, let's talk about the actual horror element in this movie, which is, of course, the killer. Now, this is called the Angel Killer. I actually really enjoyed the concept for this, and I thought it was a really good take. And taking, you know, It's a Wonderful Life and making it a horror movie, of course, you take the angel and make it a killer. I think that's cool. However, again, there's no tension, and I don't know if this is a spoiler to say. I'm gonna pause for a second if you want to fast forward. I don't think the killer was that much of a mystery. Like, that when it revealed the killer, I didn't feel anything. You know, it wasn't like, oh my God, I did not see that coming. Yeah, you saw it coming, okay? You saw it coming. They didn't really put in a lot of effort to hide the killer. And overall, I think it was a pretty lazy attempt at the backstory of the killer, to be honest. I just was not a fan of the motive behind the killer and like the backstory and all of that. I just felt like it was lazy writing. I will say the design was really cool. The intricate knife was pretty, and that was cool, although they don't use it every single kill, because why would they? But I like the angel killer conceptually, but it kind of stops there because as a concept it's interesting, but they didn't really execute it properly, in my opinion. Also, random little note, but Catherine Isabel's character is named Gail Prescott. And to me, that felt very forced. Obviously, it's an ode to Sidney Prescott and Gale Weathers from Scream, but it almost felt like, hey, this is just like Scream, right? Right? Like, it's just like Scream, making sure that we get the connection, that it's a slasher movie that's similar to Scream, I guess, even though it's really not. It just felt like a little bit forced, and it's a little bit try hard to name a character Gail Prescott. I don't know. That's like really nitpicky and does not matter to anything, but I just wanted to throw that out there. I think even if you enjoy movies like this is lower on the totem pole for these movies. Like, it's not one of the better ones, I can tell you that. I've seen a lot of them. I've seen Happy Death Day, Final Girls, Totally Killer. I've seen a lot of them, and this one is not great. I'm sure a lot of people will have fun with it. Just if you're going to watch it, just expect it to be very campy. And I mean, that's what these movies give. You know, that's what they offer to begin with. So you're not going to be surprised by anything. I just think others in the past have given way more effort in this genre. Happy Death Day and Final Girls, I think, are pretty solid. They're not my personal favorites. Final Girls is pretty good, actually, and I like the horror homages in it, but they're not my favorite movies, but they're at least well executed, and I can understand why people like them a lot. And I think that even Final Girls is great at balancing like heavy emotions with the slasher aspect as well as the comedy. I feel like there's a balance in there where there's this emotional journey for the main character, and they weren't afraid to put in like the heavier emotions and whatnot, and this one just really tried to stay away from that. And even Happy Death Day, although there was heavier moments in there for sure, like more serious moments, they did a really good job at making it a mystery. Like, we're trying to figure out why she's reliving this day over and over again, right? So there's a mystery involved there. And with It's a Wonderful Knife, everything felt straightforward. Like, you knew how she was going to resolve everything. You knew who the killer was going to be. Like, it was just not a lot of tension or mystery. So I'm gonna get into a couple spoilers, you know, just because I have more things to say and just more things to nitpick. Okay, so if you want to stick around, stick around. I don't really recommend the movie, but you know, it's on Shudder if you want to watch it. The theater scene, I really want to get into that for just a second. I thought the theater scene was so ridiculous when they're in the theater, right? And that's where her Aunt Gail dies, and a bunch of characters actually are killed in this theater. Her aunt and her boyfriend and her boyfriend's new girlfriend, I don't know. So in this scene, she's flashing her camera because she's a photographer. She's flashing the camera, using the camera flash in order to see what's going on and figure out where the killer is. But at the same time, the killer is a normal dude. He's a normal guy. So he also can't see in this theater. Why can he see and no one else can see? You're flashing the camera is just helping him out, you know? You're flashing light so he can see what's going, and obviously he like can sense where people are, like in Marco Polo, you know, he can like feel him out, but you just flashing to see where he is, just giving him assistance in finding where your friends are. So and obviously this is a horror tactic. It's been done before in previous movies, so we can see what's going on, but we only see it in flashes, so it is supposed to add this tension to it. But because it's been done before and in this situation it just seems silly, I didn't like the use of this horror technique. I hated the fact that everyone is so quick to believe her. I mean, her aunt gave her a little bit of trouble there for a second, but she tells her one anecdote and she's like, yeah, okay, come on in. Yeah, I guess I'm your aunt. Like, you wouldn't have a bigger reaction to that. Like, how would you know that? Like, everyone is so fast to believe her. She just goes up to people and be like, I wish that I wasn't here anymore, and now I'm not here, and this is a different reality, and the killer's still going strong, but I know who it is. And everyone's like, okay, sounds good. They give her like a minute of grief, and it's like, you are bending reality. Like, you're in a different reality. How are people just so normal about that? And then they come to the solution way too quickly, and granted, they do add on another little solution, so obviously there's two killers. There's one in the current reality, and then there's one in the reality where she doesn't exist. In the current reality, Justin Long's character is the killer. In the alternate reality, her dad, Joel McHale, is the killer. So she thinks if she kills her dad in the alternate reality, she can get back to reality, her actual one. Well, it turns out she also has to kill Justin Long's character as the mayor in the alternate reality too. And I don't know how they come to this conclusion, but they just do, and they come to it very quickly. And I don't know why. I don't know why that's the solution. All of it is so convenient. Like, they just know what to do. You know, they know they have to do it before the Aurora leaves, like how, and then everyone just believes her and helps her out. And it's like, you would have such a hard time if you genuinely did not exist. And that's what I mean by, if not only did the movie making feel rushed, but the story itself feels rushed. It could have been 10 more minutes of explanation, I would have been fine. You know, added a little bit more in the story to make it make sense. And obviously none of this is realistic. Like, it doesn't have to be completely believable, but at least in like Happy Death Day, it's more explained of what's going on. And it can be an answer that fits in this fantasy world that makes sense in this reality, whatever is going on. But they just didn't really flesh it out. They just like handed it to you, like, and this is what we do. It's like, how did the characters know that? How did they get to that point? But everything felt too easy. There wasn't any tension or like pressure to convince people of anything. She just like came, and she wasn't that stressed out by anything. And then they just came up with the right solution, and bada bing, it's over. And then there's like weird supernatural stuff in the end that was going on with Henry Waters, Justin Long being the mayor. He like had brainwashed everyone into being his little followers, and that was strange because it's like, where did that supernatural element come from? Obviously we have the supernatural element from the Aurora Borealis granting wishes. What happened with how is Henry Waters like controlling and hypnotizing the town? Did they explain that? Did I miss something? Was there like one line that talked about how that was even possible? I know that they said like, they said something like, oh, he's brainwashing them or something. There was hypnotizing them or something when they like realized that. But beyond that, was there any explanation of how he was doing that? Was he like demonic? Did I miss something? And if I did miss something major, that's on me. But I swear I don't remember them addressing that very much. Anyway, it wasn't great. It wasn't great. Needless to say, again, take my opinion with a grain of salt. I don't want to be negative. I don't go into these intending to be negative. However, I did know this one was not going to be for me. Much like I went into Five Nights at Freddy's, Totally Killer, Renfield. There's a lot of movies that came out this year with comedy elements that I knew I probably wouldn't like. And I watched them, you know, for the sake of my channel and to give you feedback on my thoughts in case you have a similar taste to me, and let you know, hey, if it has too much comedy, if that's not your thing. So this one is a dark comedy at the end of the day. I give it a 2 out of 5. And make sure you stay tuned. Probably in like a week or two from now, I will be doing my best and worst and ranking all the movies from 2023. So you can find out more on my thoughts about where this ranks in comparison. It's not the worst one of the year, don't worry. But let me know your thoughts. Like, this is about you as well and your opinions. I want to hear what you thought about It's a Wonderful Knife. I know it's probably a fun, good time for most people, and I shouldn't take it that seriously. But this is my channel, this is my video, this is my opinion. So this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna watch it and review it how I feel about it. And this one, I did not enjoy it, so. But leave your thoughts down below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.